here we are. Evil John OC Do Not Steal. She's a pretty infamous character that attracts circle jerks from every side, like a typical dojin. So what's the truth? Let's take a look. Jalter is an Arts Buster hybrid and she's an Avenger. Avengers have class advantage against rulers, but you'll find that matchup isn't relevant for the most part. And the thing you have to understand about these extra class servants, they have more in common with standard class servants than each other. For instance, Dantes has a very rider-like playstyle, and Jalter in turn acts like a cross between a saber and a berserker. In other words, she's a beatstick with some team support. For team building, Jalter is a very flexible attacker, and she can work with pretty much anything. Some teams make better use of her kit than others, but if you're free to play and you luck into her, you can safely use her in almost every battle. Probably not BB, unless you want to see her get the enema of a lifetime. Regardless, my point is that she's not a niche character, and team building is less a question of what you need and more about what you have. That said, I've cooked up some interesting options for you to consider. Instead of reading off her skills, I figure it's more productive to show how they work in practice. But before I do, full disclosure, I don't own Jalter, but lucky for me, half the people on JP do, so you can expect her to be a common fixture in support lists for some time to come. But yeah, I bring this up because I can't run her and another support, and in these cases I'll be using a proxy. And behind door number 1 we have the 2030 crit buster setup. Now Jalter has a problem where she's got atrocious berserker level star absorption, and one way of getting around this is to pair her with casters, who are also low on the star totem pole. Okay, one problem solved. So where are the stars coming from? Well, Amadeus is always an option, though 6 turns is a long fucking time to wait. Enter ye old cancer card Fragments of 2030. Each copy gives you 8 stars per turn. Run 2 and you've pretty much got a free quick chain. Every turn. In perpetuity. You could run a third on Jalter, but a more productive and less expensive option is to use a star absorption craft essence. I talked about these a bit in the Keltia Boys video. Sealing Designation Enforcer is great. If you got seduced by a teacher right now, you may as well run it. Fraggle Rock, perfectly acceptable. Freeze up deployment for other shit. And if you wait until next year's Keltia Boys, you can get the unpronounceable craft essence, which is fucking outstanding. Combine these with her first skill and you have a consistent and substantial DPS increase. Now it gives you a pretty substantial crit damage and absorption buff. Unfortunately, because of the way star weights work, the absorption buff alone might not be enough depending on who you run her with. Hans and Shakespeare, perfectly fine. If you're a peasant. For you high rollers though, Waver and Merlin are just absurd. Merlin especially, because he can compensate for all of Jalter's weaknesses while buffing her damage to even more absurd levels. If you want double Merlin, double Waver, they both work, but I like running one of each. Merlin lets you spam your third skill solely for DPS. Garden of Avalon gives you stars, makes up for the health you lose from spamming it, and Merlin can also give your whole team invulnerability for a turn, so you won't need to hold Jalter's skill 3 as a defensive cooldown. On the other hand, Waver can fuel everyone's NP, amp Jalter's crit damage, and he can delay enemy NPs. You play your cards right, you can have Jalter NPs on very short intervals, because between Waver and Merlin, you can pretty much get 70% charge on demand. Combine that with crit chains and arts chains, and you're getting your NP very often. May as well get this out of the way. Her NP, single target, strong damage, debuff. It's good. There's not much strategy involved in using it, you just point and click. Okay, as you might imagine, a team of Jalter, Waver, Merlin, and 2 2030s is pretty fucking expensive, so you'll need to pick your fights carefully if you want enough quartz to make it, but the rewards for doing so are massive. So option number 2, we have instant gratification. A lot of battles have 2 waves of small enemies, and a boss at the end. So with this setup, you can blow up the second wave with an AoE Noble Phantasm, generate a shitload of stars, have Jalter suck them up, and use them to fuck up the boss in wave 3. So a few caveats. First, you need to kill the entire second wave with your NP turn, or those stars will go to waste on cleanup. Now this is mostly solved by knowing your damage, which is consistent with Berserkers. Secondly, there's no guarantee you'll get Jalter cards on your crit turn. Thankfully, both Raiko and Lancelot have their own star absorb skills, so they can pick up the slack if you get unlucky. It's a simple strat, good for short battles. If you're gonna do this, you're probably gonna want a kaleidoscope. And we have the pure Buster team. So this is the most economic option. You just rip Small Fry apart with Buster chains. Limit 0 over and other Buster craft essences work fine. But Golden Sumo. Yeah, I know, I recommend it every video. But here's the thing. Jalter has a massive base attack, the highest in the game. It's absurd, and one of the reasons why Jalter is such a popular Grail target. Like, in terms of stat efficiency per Grail, she is right up there with the premier Berserkers. But yeah, imagine getting another 15% on top of that, on every card. Just all around, it's a great choice for your primary attacker. So in a brawling team, you can just mangle enemies with each buster card. Pretty straightforward. Just need to keep an eye out for crit enemies. And now we come to option number 4. So I've talked about Jeanne's poor star absorption, but there's a way around it that doesn't rely on craft essences. You see there's a de facto crit cap where at 50 stars, every card will have 100% crit chance. Sounds like a tall order, right? Not for Jack. Well, 50 is on the upper end of what you can do, but still, my point is that she's a walking slot machine. With this particular team, you may want to consider the Mages Association uniform. Its third skill gives you a mulligan in case you don't get a Jack or a Jalter chain. Servant number 3 can be whatever, maybe secondary star gen. Now I tried Nerd Alter, but her third skill doesn't work the way I expected, so fuck that. And finally, we come to everyone's favorite television show, Dragon Brawl Z. So Jalter's second skill is a typical team attack buff, but it's got a second component. It doubles up for Dragon Servants. Now, she's not a Dragon Servant, so it can hit 2 targets max. I thought this was going to be the meme team, but to be honest, it worked better than I expected. Still pretty niche though. The big issue is that a lot of Dragon Servants don't play nice with Jalter, or each other. You know that, and you normally don't want to mix standard classes when you pick attackers. Generally, you don't need a Saber and a Lancer frontlining at the same time. Keeping that in mind, some of the more promising options include Saber, Salter, Raven Lancer Elizabeth, and Lancer Alter. You can also double up on any of them from your support list, and you'll get some pretty funny results. If you're in a gambling mood, you can run 2 Kiyohimes. Put both defense debuffs on the same enemy, and either your target dies in one round or it wipes your frontline. So overall, Jalter is a strong, flexible, universal attacker. She can be a carry in crit teams and offensive support in buster teams. Keep in mind that some of her most broken setups are squarely in whale territory, so if you roll her, consider budgeting quartz between her, Merlin, extra copies of both, and fragments of 2030. Now if you don't plan on grabbing Merlin, she's not a must pick, but she's still pretty fucking good. So let me answer the $1 million question. Am I saving for Jalter? No. I'm after someone who does a lot of the same things, but with a huge rack. So I'm keeping a tight grip on my quartz, among other things. Don't let that dissuade you though. Fucking Shadow the Hedgehog, Goku Black, Bad Ash, Quality Servant, would recommend. And that's all I've got. If you enjoyed this guide, feel free to do all the like, sub shit. But more importantly, tell me what you think about this format. Alright. Till next time.